By car, it's about a 2.5 hour drive from Roma going directly south to a Napoli suburb called Torre del Greco, and then on to Pompeii for a more leisurely visit. We left Roma, blasting down the autostrada in Massimo's Lancia minivan, passing everything but a stradale in a flash. We saw the sign that we were approaching our first stop under the ever-watchful eye of Mount Vesuvius, the cameo-making center of Italy. Cameos are made from 3 different kinds of seashells, as you can see on the counter, and also, funnily enough, agate. It's sort of like sculpting in marble. You cut away all that is not the desired figure, only it's in miniature. The type of seashell dictates the background color. As you see, the work is painstaking. Patience is the governing virtue, as well as, of course, is a steady hand. The adjoining shop is a veritable cornucopia of cameos and coral. Oh, I forgot to tell you, Napoli is also the coral capital of the world. But I'll let you in on a little secret. The once prodigious Mediterranean supply is gone forever. All the new coral jewelry you see in the stores throughout the world is made from coral imported from Asia, notably Japan. The cloud-covered mountain in the center of your screen is the ever-threatening Mount Vesuvius. To the left of your screen are the outskirts of Napoli. Center left along the coast is where we are now, Torre del Greco, and on our way from cameos and coral along the pink road to the lower right of your screen for a fascinating visit to Pompeii. Renaissance church frescoes and/or paintings were the newspapers of the day. The statue, the sculptor's frozen moment in time, like today's photojournalist. Pompeii is a moment frozen forever in time of Italian chaos, geographically, geologically, and historically. Despite Vesuvius' history, Etruscans, Samnites, the Romans, and even more so today the Italians, build on its slopes. Massimo, my driver, general factotum and guide, sets up our tour with the top guide, in this case a gal. She turned us over to her uncle, Gennaro, a retired high school teacher, who instead of a 90-minute quickie, gave us a 2.5-hour in-depth tour. You'll only get a soupçon, a mere taste. So what did Pompeii look like for the rich and famous before the eruption?
Most of those buildings you're seeing there, facing the sea, facing the valley here, a splendid view, right on the valley, right on the sea, were Roman buildings with beautiful terraces, beautiful roof gardens, beautiful solariums. This building was dug out during the early excavations. That was at the time of the Bourbon kings of Naples. They were the first diggers, actually, and they, even if they were great art amateurs, they did a lot of damage nevertheless. Look at that. They took away all the marble tiles, all the statues, everything that was around here. Well, this was the gladiators' barracks. The gladiators slept in those little, cells or jails, I would say. In fact, a few of them were even found chained during the excavations. Their skeletons were recovered. They were still chained because they were left behind in that precise moment when the eruption came. Everybody ran away and the poor slave gladiators were left behind. Quite often on the walls we read, scratched by the kids of that time, by the gladiators fans of that time, their names, the names of their favorite champions. And I'm going to show you some graffiti. On the walls, the kids of that time scratched their favorite champions and actors' names. Here there is one, Gaudius, and here there are quite a few others. Once they were much clearer. So we know who the greatest champions, gladiators champions were in that time. We know who the most famous comic actors were. Paris, Paris was one of the most famous. There was even a club here in Pompeii, the Parisians. Paris, or Paris, was this famous Pompeian comic actor.
This is the Greek amphitheater. Greeks knew theater, not just bloody drama. They were highly skilled craftsmen at building amphitheaters. The pity is that almost all the marble seats, all the decorations and statuary were stolen by the kings of Naples for their palaces and parks. Gennaro will fill you in on the details.
The upper section where the ladies sat, you see, all around, that's only a little piece left, and the rest fell, was added when since the Romans took over. The Greek theater entered there, the real Greek theater, 3rd century BC. That's the reason why the acoustic in this theater is so perfect, because this is a typical, good Greek theater. The people were sitting on the stone benches there, above a hard lava rock that was underneath, the prehistoric lava rock we were talking about before. And that is always right at the foot of the Acropolis, because up the hill there were all the temples, that is during the Greek age. Well, as underneath there is this hard lava rock, and imagine the stage there, the actors would talk and their voice was heard quite clearly all the way up there where the ladies were. That's because of the hard rock underneath that would block the sound's vibrations. So they would avoid the sound vibration. Exactly. And that's the reason why. That is the secret of a perfect Greek theater with its perfect Greek acoustic.
This is one of the two north-south parallel roads. These are the major arteries, if you will. This particular one connects the southern gate with the northern gate. In the middle of the road there are 3 huge stepping stones. These kept your feet from stepping in the stinking water when it rained. A pong in this city must have been dreadful, rain or shine. Alfresco boozing is not a recent affair, as Gennaro will attest.
An example of a wine bar, the counter, there, see the counter? They would keep wine in there, and their clients approaching the counter there would get a nice glass of wine. Their favorite glass of wine was Vesuvinum, Vesuvius wine, which they would keep in those urns there, different varieties of wine. In that corner, you see, there are the first 2 steps of a stairway that led upstairs, where eventually the clients could hire a room and spend the overnight up there. And they would spend their overnight very often in company of a beautiful girl, a servant girl. This was the bar, the bartender home back there, see? Small, modest. Yes, that was the vestibule, you see, you are filming now. The vestibule, then the atrium next, and all the little rooms around it. Small, very small dwelling. This is a perfectly reconstructed house, even if it is very small. Nevertheless, the atrium is most interesting because the roof is held by the 4 columns. This is Hellenistic influence yet, you see? 2nd century BC atrium. The house was later on plastered, the walls, you see, and frescoed with some sort of architectural perspectives there, and some, you see, black and red sort of carpets. That's what they intended to imitate. A stairway in the corner that permitted to get upstairs. And they were working on it at the time of eruption. The first 3 or 4 steps were made of stone, but as the rest of it was not found, we presume that the rest of it was made of wood. So that is a reconstruction of that wooden stairway that was there.
This is another part of the house you just saw. It's the dining room with fantastic frescoes, almost perfectly preserved for nearly 2,000 years. Think of it. The dining room was always the most decorated room of the house. These walls tell stories either mythical or real, just like today's newspapers, right?
And he was working on this, quite probably, a summer dining room, a summer banquet room. And a couple of painters, quite certainly, good painters, were reproducing the three Egyptian landscapes you're seeing now on the walls. Now, the third one that is back there, we cannot approach it. And we cannot distinguish because now the colors aren't as vivid as they were in the past. Well, I can assure you that there, and if possible, we get some postcards reproducing pygmies in the canoes rowing along the Nile. Back there, that other landscape.
I wondered where downtown Pompeii was. Well, this seems to be as good a place as any. On the one hand, a main north-south avenue with Vesuvius in the background, 6 miles away. Well, we might as well be at the edge of the crater. In just a few moments, we'll see the crossroad, as Gennaro will point it out to us.
Stepping stones, the chariot wheel marks. So you could tell that chariots, once they got here, the horses first went through there, and then the two big wheels on the sides of the chariots. Whilst the chariots passed over it because they were high enough. And those were the stepping stones. That is one of the two main roads running from east to west, one of the two parallels, called the Decumanus Inferior. On this street here, north-south, straight here, during the excavations, the diggers found 753 skeletons of victims that fell and got killed by the mass of people, by the panic of the people that jumped on them.
How long did they figure it took from the time it blew its top to the time
That
most
started.
people died?
The next 5-6 hours.
That's it.
It started at 1 o'clock in the evening. And imagine that Pliny the Elder, a Roman admiral and naturalist that had come down, well, he went away from this area. He went to Stabiae, where he had dinner with his friend Pomponius up on a hill there, where Pomponius had got a nice villa. During all night, all evening, until late evening, they both could observe and take note of this volcanic phenomenon. They had, while they were having senam, dinner together. And the next morning, early in the morning, he woke up and he tried to carry everybody back to the port and get away from here, but he died on the way by asphyxiation. All this is told by Pliny the Younger, his nephew, to his friend back in Rome, Tacitus, to whom he sent 2 letters telling him what happened down here and how his uncle died. Well, we're going through Modestus' home plus his bakery shop in the back. His oven and his millstones where he would get his flour. However, are you still on? Modestus left with his family and his servants, quite probably. But he was working. He was baking his bread. The oven was found full of well-cooked loaves of bread.
This is the bakery of Modestus. He was baking bread at the time of the eruption. Bread was found in what you and I know as a pizza oven. We'll see in a minute. Watch now how the flour was milled in these large, heavy tufa mills.
Here we are. They will have 2 beams. 2 slaves will turn it around, putting the flour, the wheat in here. The flour was then collected at the bottom here. A water cistern, a water reservoir, even if they would have running water, I'm going to show you how, that is the oven. A real pizza oven.
Well, how do the rich and famous live? I mean, in style. Believe it or not, they had running water and even a primitive sewage system. That was a whole lot better than the rest of them. This is Marcus Lucretius's house, a man of leisure.
This man was related to the famous writer, and he would love, in fact, in the house up there where the garden is, with all the furniture and a little fountain in the middle, well, that was his home stage for home performances. So actors, musicians, dancers would be invited to act, to perform in there, where usually in the summertime when he would have nice, good relatives, guests coming down from Rome. The little arches in there tells that in the back there was a latrine, the house latrine, a toilet.
Why?
Underneath there was a septic tank. When that septic tank was full and smelled bad, the workers, the slaves, would work outside the house, opening that part under the arch. You see there, that brick part there, getting a hole and emptying the septic tank, carrying the stuff outside up to the volcano where they would have their fields in order to fertile their fields, and afterwards they could reconstruct, you see, just that little part of the wall there. In this house, that beautiful fresco you can see from outside because we are not allowed, represents, way back there, see, Orpheus, that is playing his lyra and is singing, and his idea is to enchant all those wild animals around him. In the garden was left to his chain a dog. We have in fact found in this house the plaster cast of a dog, a chained dog. The first part of the house is the atrium, beautifully decorated, the most refined, very elegant. Around the atrium they will have their winter quarters. In the middle there was the reception room, the paterfamilias reception room. In the back there was a beautiful cloister, beautiful garden around which there were the summer quarters. So they would move back there in the summertime, in the open, around the open garden.
Thank God we don't go around with names like Basonius Prius. This guy did. He was a man of means. Why? Because obviously he had a well-decorated dining room, but he could also afford that impressive fresco in the garden. We're getting near the top or the bottom of the social heap, depending on how you want to look at it. His name is a real mouthful, Lucius Calcalus Jucundus. He's a banker, and in those days, both a coin dealer and a money lender.
We found all his manuscripts in his treasure chest, together with all his precious things. More than 52 waxed tablets were found, perfectly intact, and a few papyrus. All his manuscripts, all his important books. Long lists of all his clients we could read, the money he had lent since the beginning, and all the interest that people were supposed to bring back. 45% a year.
Hey,
a real,
if you can get it.
a real vampire.
I have to break now for a commercial.
The four dancing, happy Piselli there, see? With a glass of wine in the middle.
Oh.
Wine makes you feel happy,
Yes.
and wine makes you feel excited. Upstairs, there was what you could get anyhow, that's right. So that was a street sign again, or a shop sign.
Guess who's at the top of the heap and the most ostentatious of all Pompeians? Give up? Why, a lawyer, of course. He has the largest house. It is 3,200 square meters. That translates into a mere 32,000 square feet.
His name was scratched, among many others, on the courtyard walls there, saying Cassius Saturninus was one of the greatest jurists in Pompeii, or juris doctor. The biggest private villa, 45 rooms, 3,200 square meters, one property, 4 apartments. Around the garden, around the 2 gardens, summer and spring quarters. 2 gardens.
That was the peristyle.
Yes, and this is a peristyle too. So 2 peristyles and 2 atriums. Two. Round the first one, the autumn section. Round the second one, the winter section. Spring and summer back here in the shade. And the vegetation, the flowers, the fountains. Whilst during the winter time, they were closed in and there were their hibachis or braziers warming the rooms themselves. In fact, we found so many of such utensils, house utensils, braziers or hibachis, or barbecues if you want.
Pompeians had to mangiare, so they went to this open-air supermarket, decorated with frescoes and statues and marble and what have you. It's in a style that reminds me of the modern food hall in Harrods in London. Though primitive by comparison, it's still in a very elegant setting.
Here we have, look at that, architectural perspectives, perfect, look at that. Big pictures up there showing the first one on the table, some fish, you see, so they would sell fish even here. And the next one, even a cage where they would keep their chickens, you see, some dead chickens there hanging from the sticks there, some birds there, and then meat there next, you see there, even meat. In fact, in this place, we found...
This was the open-air meat market.
This was open in the middle, food market, food, meat, fish, everything. Vegetables, legumes, we found them in all those little boxes there, or stores there, see? Little stores there where the vendors were. Where all the little shops where the vendors would sell their products. Among their products, we found in there big quantities of carbonized peas, chestnuts, walnuts, figs, dates, all sort of legumes. And in that corner there, that was the place where they would sell meat. In fact, we found a lot of meat bones in there. In the middle, fishermen would sell their fish. We found in a little drain a lot of fish bones in there, chicken bones too. So this was their official town food market. You see that panel in the middle?
I see the panel in the middle, yes.
Good. That is Ulysses conversing with Penelope.
With his wife.
After 20 years, Ulysses, as a poor man, you see, gets back home, and then that's when he tells Penelope, I am Ulysses. And then they think about the revenge for the next day.
Yes.
And he prepares his plans for the next day. In the glass cases, they were found somewhere else, but they have been taken through here. They weren't found in this place. The 2 victims we have in those 2 glass cases are practically the plaster casts of 2 human bodies. Their skeletons remained. In fact, you can see their cranium there, and the teeth if you get closer, and the finger bones. Get the finger bones too. So we simply filled up the mold his body left perishing in the ash with plaster. So we got the plaster cast of that human body there, exactly as he died. The arch was a Caligula memorial arch, once faced with marble tiles, above which there was Caligula on a horseback. At the end of the street, a watchtower. You see, the town ended there. The volcano Vesuvius on the left, and Mount Somma, that volcano on the right. Now we are entering the Forum.
No TV, no radio, no newspapers. To get the latest news, a large open rectangle, the Forum, was the place to schmooze for the news. Around it was the basilica, or the law court, and all the various temples. This is the temple of Apollo, the sun god.
That stone downstairs there, down the altar of the temple that was upstairs and that was covered too, was the sacrificial altar. That stone there, see? Upstairs there was the real altar of the temple. Those are all the original roof tiles that they could pick up, you say, during the excavations. Long time ago, because all the wall paintings were taken away from this and the statues were taken away. Apollo and Diana on the other side, his sister, you see? There is a bronze bust there representing the Apollo's twin sister, Diana, the hunter. Both are copies of the original statues. The original ones were taken away in 1820 when the temple was dug out. Now, next, there is a beautiful Ionic column there, see? You see the volutes there? Typically Ionic, very elegant, above which there is a sundial. Can you see it?
Oh, yeah.
It still works, you see? Perfectly. The marble plaque with the writing on the column, you see? Well, that tells that two high officers had donated it to the temple. Two Pompeii duoviers, high magistrates. Well, that was the excuse to be elected again by the electors. This was the courthouse, built in the second half of 2nd century BC, destroyed by the earthquake in 62 AD. The colonnade had fallen down, the roof, everything. They had just started rebuilding it 17 years after, but they never finished. The number of columns all around, 28, tells that there was a portico, a covered portico all around it. But the central part was open to the sky. That part back there called the tribunal, well, imagine the judges sitting there and ruling the justice in this palace.
The Catholic Church designates some of its important churches basilicas because the word basilica means place of the king.
Pompeii was founded overlooking the whole valley in front, on the right, the sea. In a minute you can film, there is the Isle of Capri too. You can see from here.
On Sunday, I'm going to go and see the Prince of Capri.
The Prince of Capri.
You don't know the Prince of Capri?
No.
His name is Peter van Voort.